Welcome back, 1136 News Radio 700 WLW. So are men smarter than women? Well, ask most men and they'll say yes. And that's because most men tend to think they're smarter and bigger and more problem-solving than women. And apparently this has a lot to do with how much of a macho man you are. Listen to this. New research indicates that men are more likely than women to overestimate their IQ. In fact, the more masculine a man is, the more likely he is to overestimate his IQ. Now, according to this survey, when asked to estimate IQ, male scores, quote unquote, were more often overestimates and female scores were more often underestimates. So what is it about men that makes them think that they're smarter than women? Because I'll give you just a little thumbnail on that. If you're a guy listening to this, that's not usually a recipe for success in relationships. I'm just saying. Leigh Richardson, been on our show many, many times. It's great to have her back. She's a licensed professional counselor and founder of the Brain Performance Center. And who doesn't want their brain performing better? She joins us here on 700 WLW. Leigh, how are you on this glorious Thursday?
I am wonderful. How about you? I'm getting smarter by the minute, too.
I am. You know, you may not know this, but I'm a man. And oftentimes I find myself falling into the quote-unquote smartest man in the room syndrome. What is it about my gender that makes us think that we are intellectually superior to women? What is it about us, Leigh? Help me. Bring me back to where I need to be.
Well, I'll bring you back to where you need to be, Ken. I'll tell you this.
And I've heard that before.
Did you know that 70% of valedictorians are females?
Oh.
70% of the valedictorians are females. So now after I stated that, let's go back to your question. And I think, most people today agree that men and women are equal in intelligence. I mean, I think there's been some gender stereotyping going on in the past. And if you go back historically, because a woman's brain has a slightly smaller skull, they believe that women, were inferior. But then when you think about it, bigger is not better when it comes to brain, because think about elephants. Think about how big their brain is. So, but I think and I read the study that you referred to, and it was pretty interesting because one of the links, it ties into their general self-esteem. And it's not that, men over-report and then women under-report. So it's kind of got a dual path there going.
What does it have to do with ego and the way men of certain generations, like men that were raised before, I don't even know what the generation was called before baby boomers, but that generation, baby boomers, and on into what we've had, the various late letter alphabet numbers. What does it say about the way men were raised if this is indeed how they view themselves?
Well, I think you bring up a really good point. Men were raised to take care of things. You've got to handle it. You've got to do the important stuff. You've got to do the work. The women were raised to stay home and nurture and take care of the good children. And I think that cultural impact is alive and well, but I think we're definitely seeing that change. And of course, I believe that it's about time. But I think that, when you think about self-esteem, that there's studies that show the parental beliefs about their children's IQ predict how far their kid's going to go in school, how much they're going to achieve. And I was a twin. I had a twin brother. And the expectation was no less for me than it was for my brother. Yeah. But I don't know that that's been reflected in all cultures.
Yeah. All of what I'm saying is anecdotal. You obviously have much more learned in this topic, but in my business, which is world renowned for breeding egomaniacs, most of the ego problems that I saw or encountered in over 45 years in this business have been from men. Rarely did I encounter one from a woman. Now, again, that's anecdotal, and there were several instances when I did, but invariably it was it were men whose egos were just raging out of control, and women's weren't. And I don't know if my business is a microcosm of the rest of what's going on in the world, but I think it goes back to a little bit about how people were raised by gender going through the various generations. Is it really that gender specific in what you've encountered in your career?
Well, actually, it's interesting because in the study, it said even females that had a strong masculine trait tended to have more higher self-esteem. But in my clinic, in my day-to-day life, it is more gender specific. And, while I started off saying that 70% of the valedictorians are female, there's still discrimination in a lot of the Ivy League schools. There's a loophole in the law, and places like Yale, they still admit more male than they do female. So I think that as much as I'd like to think that we're breaking out of that gender stereotyping, we're not. And I mean, when you look at it, it goes back to the caveman days. And it's going to take a lot of effort to pull everybody out of it.
One of the things I've heard in my various in my life, it's that men view themselves as problem solvers. That, if indeed your mate comes to you and she says, well, this is going on or this happened to me and all that, rather than just listening and empathizing, they want to solve a problem. And I think this may play into that argument, if indeed that's true. I know, again, that's a gross generalization and it's anecdotal. But I think men view themselves as having to solve a problem rather than being empathetic with the situation. How far off base am I here with that?
You hit the nail on the head. And that's one of the biggest conflicts I hear in marriages is, all I wanted was for him to listen. The book written in the 60s, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. Yeah. And I think there is a lot of truth to that. Yeah. And I personally have experienced that. And I'll say, just listen to me. Okay. But let me tell you.
Well, or what I've said once and I've got in trouble. Well, I'm listening to everything important that you're saying. That didn't work out so well. But no, it is. Men think they're supposed to solve problems, and I think that goes back to this study about overestimating their IQ and thinking that they're smarter and trying to get things done. I mean, I think if we as a gender could just calm down a little bit, I think the world would be in better shape, let alone what's going on domestically. Would you not agree?
Oh, absolutely. But, I've seen a study that says most people see themselves as above average. And that's statistically impossible. So I don't think it's just men. I think that, nobody wants to be average. We all have to be above average.
Have you ever had anybody talk to you or lie down on your couch and say, you know what, I'm above average. You're not great? No. You don't want to be great? No, I just want to be above average. That's never happened. Come on, who's going to say that about themselves?
No, you're right. We all strive for greatness. And I think the last 2 years have put a different emotional context for a lot of us. And we do want more. We do want better for ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Leigh Richardson, our guest, licensed professional counselor, about this new study that men rated their intelligence higher than females. Psychological gender was also a very strong predictor, with highly masculine subjects rating their intellectual ability higher. Well, it's interesting. I suppose you could probably spend the next 100 years studying this and talking about it. But what probably at the root of it is it's probably never going to change. It might be something in the DNA, but as we go through generations, maybe as children are raised more equal and different than what they were raised back in the bad old days of the 50s and 60s, maybe this kind of thing won't be quite as prevalent today, 20, 30, 40 years from now than it is today. I think it all goes back to parenting, how you're raised, and whether or not you empower your children regardless of gender. And I think we're a lot better than where we were. I think we're not as good as where we're going to go. Would you agree?
I agree with that 100%. I think the future is getting brighter every year.
Leigh, it's great having you on again. Stay well. We need to hear your voice. We'll visit down the road. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. Have a great day.
Leigh Richardson. She was into organizational behavior. She really has a fascinating story. She was into organizational behavior and then shifted to human behavior in 2003. Her son suffered a traumatic brain injury, and she herself has been in the ICU a couple of times with brain injury, and so that fueled her to found this clinic, the Brain Performance Center in Dallas. They've